She said it with a smile. That was the part that hurt the most. Not the words, though the words were cruel enough. It was the smile. Soft, almost gentle, like she was doing him a favor by finally saying it out loud. Like the truth was a gift she had been holding back too long. I married you out of pity, Owen. You know that, right? The table went silent. 32 people. 4 long tables pushed together in his mother's backyard. String lights hanging low over bowls of food still steaming. His aunt mid-laugh, fork frozen halfway to her mouth. His younger brother, Victor, slowly setting down his glass. His mother at the far end, her hand going still on the tablecloth like she had just touched something cold. Owen did not move. He sat there, both hands flat on the table, and he let the words settle into the air the way a stone settles into still water, slow, heavy, and permanent. His wife, Diane, sat to his left. She was wearing the blue dress he loved. The one with the small white buttons down the front that she wore the first night they went dancing 3 years ago. Her hair was curled the way it always was when she wanted to look put together. She looked beautiful. She always looked beautiful. And somehow, at this moment, that made everything worse. Diane. That was his cousin Petra, voice low and sharp. What are you saying? I'm saying what's true. Diane reached for her wine glass, calm as a woman reading a grocery list. We were 26. He had nothing. No real job, no connections, no direction. I felt sorry for him. And I thought I could fix that. I thought caring for someone was the same as loving them. She tilted her glass slightly, as if thinking. It isn't. Someone at the far table made a small sound, half gasp, half swallowed protest. Owen's mother stood up from her chair. Sit down, Ma. Owen's voice was quiet. Not angry. Not broken. Just quiet, the kind of quiet that fills a room more than shouting ever could. His mother sat. He looked at Diane then. Really looked at her. He studied the line of her jaw, the way her fingers rested easy on her wine glass, the absence of any trembling in her hands. She was not nervous. She had not said this by accident or in the heat of an argument or with tears running down her face. She had said it the way people say things they have rehearsed. Carefully. Deliberately. At a table full of family on their 5th wedding anniversary. He nodded once. Then he pushed back his chair, folded his napkin neatly beside his plate, and stood. Owen, Victor started. I'm fine. He said it quietly enough that no one could argue. He picked up his jacket from the back of his chair, draped it over his arm, and walked through the back gate without looking back. He had been 23 when he first saw her. It was at a mutual friend's birthday party, one of those crowded apartment gatherings where the music was too loud and the drinks were too warm and everyone was pretending to have more fun than they were actually having. He had been standing near the window, nursing a drink he had barely touched, watching the city lights below, when he heard a laugh cut through the noise, honest, unguarded, a little too loud, the kind of laugh that did not care what anyone thought of it. He turned. She was standing across the room in a yellow top, gesturing widely with both hands as she told a story to a group of 4 people who were all leaning in. Her name, he would learn later that night, was Diane Mercer. She studied literature. She liked old movies and bad weather and eating breakfast food at midnight. She thought most people were too afraid to say what they actually meant. He thought she was the most interesting person he had ever seen. He made his way over slowly, the way you approach something you are afraid might disappear. He stood at the edge of the group long enough that she noticed him and tilted her head with a question in her eyes. You were listening, she said. You were worth listening to, he said. She smiled. Not a polite smile. A real one, the kind that reached the corners of her eyes. And something between them clicked into place like a key turning in a lock. They talked until the party emptied around them. They walked home along the river because neither of them wanted the night to end. At the corner of her street she had stopped walking, turned to him, and said, "You're different from most people." "Is that good?" he asked. "I think so," she said. "I haven't decided yet." He laughed. And that night, walking home alone in the cold, he felt something he could not quite name, warm and certain, like the first day of spring after a very long winter. He thought about that night now as he walked through the quiet streets outside his mother's house. The evening air was cool and carried the faint smell of someone's garden, something green and alive. He loosened his collar and walked without direction, the sound of his own footsteps the only company he wanted. He was not going to cry. He was not going to call her and demand an explanation. He was not going to go back inside and perform anger for a room full of relatives who were probably still sitting there whispering into each other's ears. He was not going to do any of the things a man was expected to do when the floor fell out from under him. He was going to walk. He had always been a walker. In the early years, when money was tight and the apartment was small and the gap between where he was and where he wanted to be felt like a canyon, he would walk. Miles sometimes. Through neighborhoods he didn't belong to, past restaurants he couldn't afford, along the river when the city felt too loud. He walked because it was the one thing that cost nothing and gave everything back. It cleared the noise, untangled the thoughts, reminded him that the world was still moving even when he felt stuck. Tonight the world felt very large and very quiet. And somewhere inside him, in a place he rarely let anyone see, a small and careful voice said, "You always knew." Not the cruelty of the words. Not the public setting. Not the smile. But the feeling underneath it all, the slight hesitation before "I love yous," the way she sometimes looked at him like she was calculating something, the moments when her warmth felt like charity rather than choice. He had loved her the way you love a light left on in a window, with gratitude, with relief, without ever asking who left it burning or why. He stopped walking. He was standing in front of a small park, benches empty, the trees moving gently overhead. He sat down on the nearest bench and looked up through the branches at the dark sky, and he breathed. His phone buzzed. Victor. He ignored it. It buzzed again. His mother. He put it face down on the bench beside him. He sat there a long time. Not falling apart. Not planning anything. Just sitting, breathing, letting the night hold the weight of it while he figured out what kind of man he was going to be from this moment forward. He thought about the small rented office space across the city. The 11 months of late nights. The code his partner Remy said could change how mid-sized companies handled their supply chains. The meeting they had in 3 weeks with a venture capital firm that his accountant had already called, the kind of meeting most people don't get twice. He thought about the fact that he had told Diane almost none of this. Not because he wanted to hide it from her. But because every time he tried to talk about it, about the startup, the vision, the years of quiet, stubborn building, her eyes would drift slightly, the way eyes drift when someone is being polite but not present. So he stopped talking about it. He kept it separate. Like something private. Like something he was saving. Now, sitting on a bench in the dark, he let himself feel something he had been careful not to feel for a very long time. Not anger. Not sadness, exactly. Pride. Quiet, unfashionable, bone-deep pride, the kind that does not need anyone's approval because it was built in private, at midnight, with nobody watching. He picked up his phone. He opened his messages and typed a single line to Remy. "We're not postponing the meeting. See you at 9 on Monday." He sent it. Set the phone back down. Looked up at the sky again. The story she had told about him tonight, the man with nothing, no direction, no real future, was already 3 years out of date. Maybe longer. She just didn't know it yet. The office was not much to look at. One rented room on the 4th floor of a building that smelled like old coffee and carpet cleaner. 2 desks. One whiteboard so covered in diagrams and scribbled formulas that the original white surface had long disappeared. A mini fridge that hummed too loud. A window that looked out over a parking lot. Owen had spent more honest hours in this room than anywhere else in his life. His business partner, Remy Okafor, was already there when Owen arrived on Monday morning, hunched over his laptop, 3 empty paper cups lined up beside his keyboard like small trophies. Remy was tall, sharp-minded, and had the particular gift of being able to read Owen's face the way other people read headlines, fast, accurately, and without being asked. He looked up when Owen walked in. He looked at Owen's face. He said nothing for a moment. Then, how bad? Bad enough. Owen dropped his bag, sat down, opened his own laptop. Remy turned fully in his chair. Do you want to talk about it? No. Okay. Remy turned back to his screen. That was one of the things Owen valued most about him. He knew the difference between support and pressure. He never pushed. He simply stayed. They worked in silence for the better part of an hour. Outside, the city woke up slowly, delivery trucks, pigeons, the distant rhythm of traffic finding its morning pace. Owen pulled up the pitch deck for the Harlow Capital meeting and began going through it line by line, tightening the language, sharpening the numbers. The company was called Streamline. 18 months old on paper, but really it had been living inside Owen's head for years before that, born in the margins of notebooks during his lunch breaks, fed by late-night research sessions while Diane slept, raised quietly and stubbornly the way you raise something you love too much to rush. The idea was clean, a software platform that helped mid-sized businesses manage their supply chains in real time, cutting waste, predicting delays before they happened, and doing it all through an interface simple enough that you didn't need an IT department to run it. In a world full of overcomplicated enterprise software, Streamline was the room with all the furniture removed, just what you needed, exactly where you needed it. Remy had called it embarrassingly elegant the first time he saw the full prototype. Coming from Remy, that was the highest possible compliment. Slide 9, Remy said without looking up. I know, Owen said. I'm fixing it. The revenue projection needs one more decimal point of confidence. I said I know, Remy. Remy smiled at his screen. He's back. Owen did not smile. But something in his shoulders loosened, just slightly, the way a knot eases when you finally find the right end to pull. He did not go home that night. He had not gone home the night before either. He had checked into a small hotel near the office, nothing fancy, just a clean bed and a window and enough quiet to think. He had not called Diane. He had not answered her 2 messages, both of which were short and carefully worded in the way that messages are when someone is not yet sure if they are apologizing or explaining. Can we talk? And then, 6 hours later. I think I said some things wrong. Some things. Not the things. Not everything. Some things. Owen had read both messages 3 times, set his phone face down on the nightstand, and gone to sleep. Meanwhile, across the city, the world Diane had known was quietly rearranging itself around her. It started with his mother. Patricia Brooks was a small woman with large opinions and a memory like a steel trap. She had never said a bad word about Diane in 5 years, not to Owen, not to anyone. She had welcomed her into the family with food and warmth and the particular generosity of a woman who believes that love expands to hold whoever needs it. The morning after the anniversary dinner, Patricia did not call Diane. She did not call the next day either. On the 3rd day, Diane called her. The phone rang 4 times and went to voicemail. Patricia's voice on the recording sounded warm and ordinary, the voice of a woman who had nothing against anyone. Diane left a short message. It was not returned. Then there was Petra, who usually texted Diane memes on Tuesday mornings. No memes came. Then there was the group chat, 17 members of the extended Brooks family, usually noisy with photos and jokes and arguments about sports, which had gone completely silent from Diane's side, not because anyone had removed her, but because every time she thought about typing something, the cursor just blinked at her, waiting, and she found she had nothing to say. She sat at the kitchen table one evening with a cup of tea going cold in front of her and looked around the apartment they had shared. Owen's running shoes by the door. His books stacked in the corner with little paper bookmarks sticking out of them. A photo on the wall from their second anniversary, the two of them on a hiking trail, sunburned and laughing, her face turned toward his hand at the small of her back. She looked at that photo for a long time. She had always believed she was the one who held things together. The one with the plan, the direction, the clear-eyed sense of how the future should look. Owen was the dreamer, the gentle one, the man who took long walks and spoke quietly and never seemed to be in a hurry to arrive anywhere. She had never thought to ask where he was going. She had never thought he might already be there. The Harlow Capital meeting was on a Thursday. Owen wore a gray suit he had bought 18 months ago for exactly this occasion and had never worn since, keeping it clean in the back of the closet like a promise he was saving. He and Remy arrived 12 minutes early. They sat in the reception area of a glass-walled office on the 22nd floor and watched the city spread out below them, enormous and indifferent and full of possibility. "Nervous?" Remy asked. "No," Owen said. And the strange and honest thing was, he wasn't. He had been nervous for years. Nervous that the idea wasn't good enough, that the timing was wrong, that the world wasn't ready, that he wasn't ready. He had carried that nervousness quietly, the way you carry something fragile, making sure not to set it down too hard. But somewhere between the anniversary dinner and this Thursday morning, the nervousness had left him. In its place was something calmer and more permanent. He knew what he had built. He knew what it was worth. He did not need anyone in this room, or any room, to tell him that. A door opened. A woman in a sharp blazer stepped into the reception area. "Mr. Brooks? They're ready for you." Owen stood. Straightened his jacket. Picked up his folder. "Ready?" Remy murmured beside him. Owen thought of a parking lot view. 11 months of late nights. A whiteboard full of ideas that nobody had believed in yet except the two of them. A table of 32 people gone silent. A woman in a blue dress with a wine glass in her hand. "I've been ready," he said. And walked through the door. The headline read, "Streamline secures $14 million Series A, the startup nobody saw coming." Diane found out the way most people find out things they were never meant to miss, by accident, on a Tuesday, in a coffee shop. She was waiting for her order when the woman beside her held up her phone to show a friend something on the screen. The photo was small from where Diane stood, but the face was unmistakable. A professional headshot, clean background, the subject looking directly at the camera with the particular calm of someone who has nothing left to prove. Owen. Her Owen. In a business magazine. She set down her coffee cup carefully, the way you set things down when your hands have suddenly forgotten how to hold anything. She pulled out her own phone and searched his name. The results came fast and plentiful. Tech blogs, business journals, a short video interview where he sat in what looked like a very different office from any she had known about, wide windows, clean lines, the soft hum of a real company in the background. He was speaking in full, confident sentences about supply chain efficiency and the future of mid-sized business infrastructure, and he looked entirely at home in a world she had never known existed. She watched the video twice. In 5 years of marriage, she had seen Owen tired, seen him hopeful, seen him gentle and patient and occasionally frustrated. She had seen him make her laugh at 11 at night when she couldn't sleep. She had seen him cook terrible pasta and refuse to admit it was terrible. She had seen him leave wildflowers on her desk without a note because he said notes were for people who didn't pay attention. She had never seen him like this. Sure. Settled. Magnetic in a quiet way that didn't ask for your attention, it simply had it. When, she thought. When did this happen? But she already knew the answer. It had happened in the evenings she thought he was just going for his walks. It had happened in the early mornings she woke to find his side of the bed empty and the apartment still. It had happened across hundreds of small, ordinary days when she had been too busy being certain about who he was to notice who he was becoming. She walked home slowly, coffee forgotten on the counter. The calls started coming from everywhere. Old colleagues who had smiled politely at Owen's little project now sent congratulatory messages with exclamation points and warm, generous offers to catch up. A university professor who had given him a B- in his entrepreneurship class sent a LinkedIn message saying he always knew Owen had great potential. A neighbor who had once joked that Owen was still figuring it out, invited him to speak at a local business event. Owen read most of these messages the way you read menus at a restaurant you have already decided to leave, briefly, without much interest. The only message that made him pause came from his brother Victor, who wrote simply, "I always knew, man. Always. Proud of you" doesn't even cover it. Owen called him back immediately and they talked for an hour, easy and warm, the way brothers talk when there is nothing left to prove to each other. Remy, for his part, had gone from quiet and focused to quietly electric. He moved through the new office. They had signed the lease 2 weeks after the Harlow deal, with the energy of a man whose belief had just been justified by the entire universe. He bought a better coffee machine. He hired 3 people. He started every morning by standing at the wide window and looking out at the city as if greeting it personally. "You should enjoy this more," he told Owen one afternoon. "I'm enjoying it," Owen said. "You're processing it," Remy corrected. "That's different. Enjoying it looks like smiling." "Occasionally." Owen smiled, small, real, unhurried. "There it is," Remy said, satisfied, and went back to his laptop. The evening that stayed with Owen longest was a quiet one. He had stayed late in the office after Remy and the new team had gone home. He sat at his desk in the near dark, city lights pressing soft against the windows, and he looked at the framed photograph he had moved from the old office to this one, his grandmother on the porch of her house, squinting into the sun, laughing at something just outside the frame. She had raised 3 children on a teacher's salary in a small town that didn't have much to offer. She had never complained about it. When Owen was 12 she had told him, in the matter-of-fact way she said important things, "The world will underestimate you, baby. Let it. The surprise is worth more than the argument." He had not understood that then. He understood it now. He thought about Diane finding out. He had been waiting for it, not with satisfaction, not with the sharp pleasure of a man who wanted to be proven right. Just with the steady, patient awareness that the truth always finds its own timing. He wondered how she would feel. He wondered, more quietly, how he would feel when she found out. The answer surprised him. Not triumphant. Not cold. Just tired. The particular tiredness of someone who has been carrying something heavy for a very long time and is only now allowing himself to set it down. He locked the office. Walked to his car. Drove home to the new apartment, smaller than the one they had shared, but entirely his, every object in it chosen without compromise or apology. He made tea. Stood at the window. Watched the city. His phone buzzed. An unknown number. He almost didn't answer. But something, instinct, or curiosity, or the particular pull of unfinished things, made him pick up. Owen. Her voice. Careful. Quiet. A long pause in which the whole city seemed to hold its breath. "Diane," he said. She had rehearsed what she would say. She had rehearsed it for 2 weeks, actually, in the shower, on the train, lying awake at 3 in the morning staring at the ceiling while the apartment felt too large and too quiet around her. She had written versions of it in a notebook and crossed them all out. She had called her friend Lola and talked through it for an hour and hung up still not knowing the right words. And then when she heard his voice on the phone, steady and calm, saying her name like a period at the end of a sentence, not a question mark, all the rehearsed words left her entirely. "I saw the article," she said. "I know. I didn't know, Owen. I want you to know that I didn't know. I know that too." She pressed her free hand flat against her kitchen counter, needing something solid. Can we meet? Just to talk. Somewhere neutral. A coffee, or... Saturday, he said. 2 o'clock. The place on Alderton Street with the green awning. You know the one. She did know it. It was the cafe they had gone to on their first real date, not the party where they met but the Saturday after, when he had shown up 5 minutes early and been standing outside in the cold reading a book when she arrived, and he had looked up and smiled as if he had been expecting her all along. Saturday, she said. Yes. I'll be there. He hung up without saying goodbye. He had always done that, not rudely, just practically, as if the goodbye was already understood. She used to tease him about it. She used to say, you know most people end calls with actual words. And he would look at her with those calm dark eyes and say, you knew I was coming. You knew I was going. What's the word for? She had laughed then. Now she stood in her kitchen holding a silent phone and felt the particular ache of remembering something you cannot get back. He was there when she arrived. Of course he was. 5 minutes early, the same as always. He was sitting at a window table with a coffee in front of him and no book this time, just his hands folded on the table, watching the street outside with the focused patience of a man who had nowhere better to be. He looked different. She had been telling herself it was just the magazine photos, the professional lighting, the angle. But seeing him in person, there was something settled about him that had not been there before. Not taller, not changed in any physical way she could name. Just more himself, somehow. More present in his own skin, the way people sometimes get after they have stopped waiting for permission to take up space. She sat down across from him. You look well, she said, because she had to say something and it was true. You too. He said it without warmth or coldness, just the way you state a fact. The waiter came. She ordered tea. They sat in a silence that was not comfortable exactly, but was not hostile either. It was the silence of two people who know each other very well and are taking the time to remember that. I owe you an apology, she said. You do, he agreed. She had expected him to argue, or to say no the way people say when they are pretending they don't want the apology they have been waiting for. His simple agreement knocked her slightly sideways. What I said at the dinner was true, he offered. Not sharply. Just, levelly. She looked at him. I believed it was true when I said it. But I think, she stopped. Tried again. I think I used a truth that was once real to avoid a different truth that I was afraid of. Which was? That I stopped working at it. That it was easier to believe I had married down than to admit I had checked out. She looked at her hands. Saying I married you out of pity made me the generous one. The self-aware one. It made me feel like I was the one who had always seen clearly. She looked up. But I wasn't seeing you at all. Owen looked at her for a long moment. The cafe hummed softly around them, low music, the knock of cups, two women laughing at the table behind her. Do you know what the strangest part is? He said. What? The night you said it, I walked for almost 2 hours. And the whole time, the thing I kept coming back to wasn't what you said about me. It was how it felt to realize I had been so careful to keep the parts of myself I was most proud of hidden from the one person who was supposed to see them. Her breath caught. Owen. I thought I was protecting them, he continued, quiet and even. My work, my dreams, all of it. I kept it separate because every time I tried to bring it to you, you were, somewhere else. And I told myself that was fine. That love didn't require being fully seen. He lifted his coffee cup, set it down again. That's on me, as much as it's on you. She felt her eyes fill. She blinked it back. Can you forgive me? He looked at her, at the blue eyes he had first noticed across a crowded apartment, at the hands she always pressed flat on surfaces when she was nervous, at the face he had woken up beside for 5 years and learned the way you learn a landscape, every light and every shadow. I already have, he said simply. I forgave you on that bench the night you said it. Not for you, for me. Because carrying it would have slowed me down. She gave a small, helpless laugh that was more tears than laughter. That's very you, Owen. I know. They looked at each other across the small table, and for a moment it was almost like those early evenings by the river, almost like the warmth that had once existed between them, easy and certain. Almost, but not quite. The shape of something was the same. The substance of it had changed. I miss you, she said softly. His eyes were kind. Honestly, truly kind, the same kindness that had first drawn her to him, that she had somehow, shamefully, confused for weakness. I know, he said again. He reached across the table and covered her hand with his for just a moment, warm, brief, final. Then he gently withdrew it. 3 months after the coffee shop, Owen stood at the window of his office on the 22nd floor and watched the sun go down over the city. The sky was the color of something you couldn't name, not quite orange, not quite red, somewhere between the end of one thing and the beginning of another. Below, the streets moved with the ordinary rush of evening, people going home, people going out, the whole enormous machinery of the city doing what it always did, without asking anyone's permission. Remy had left an hour ago, poking his head in the doorway to say, "Stop working. Go eat something. Be a human person." Owen had laughed, a real one, the easy kind that came now with increasing frequency, like a muscle remembering its proper use. He had been thinking about the past year. Not obsessively. Not with the circular, sleepless energy of regret. Just quietly, the way you think about a road you've traveled when you're finally standing still, noting the turns, the difficult stretches, the unexpected patches of beauty you almost missed because you were too focused on the next mile. He thought about the anniversary dinner and the way the string lights had swayed in the evening air while 32 people went silent. He thought about the hotel room. The long walks. The whiteboard covered in diagrams. He thought about a cafe on Alderton Street and a woman pressing her hand flat on a table. He thought about his grandmother on her porch, squinting into the sun, laughing at something he would never be able to see. The surprise is worth more than the argument. Diane had called twice in the weeks following the coffee shop. Both times warm, uncertain, hopeful in the particular way of someone standing at a door they are not sure is open. They had talked, genuinely talked, without performance or defense, the way they had talked on that first night at the party when the music was too loud and neither of them wanted to stop. She was working on something, she told him. Not him, herself. A therapist. A journal. The uncomfortable project of looking clearly at the stories she told herself about other people and asking which ones were true. I keep thinking about what you said, she told him on the second call. About keeping the best parts of yourself hidden. And I think I did the same thing. Just in the opposite direction. I hid the parts of myself that weren't sure. That were afraid. I covered them with certainty because certainty felt safer. A pause. You never needed fixing, Owen. I needed to stop needing to fix things. He listened. He heard her. He held the words carefully, the way you hold something with sharp edges, not carelessly, not at arm's length, but with the full respect of knowing it can cut. You're going to be okay, Diane, he said. Are you? She asked. He looked around his office. The wide windows and the city below. The framed photo of his grandmother. The whiteboard with new diagrams, new problems, new ideas reaching toward new solutions. The life he had built in the quiet, patient dark, without applause, without witnesses, without anyone's belief but his own. Yes, he said. And meant it fully, in his whole body, the way you mean things that have been earned. There was one final dinner. He had planned it carefully, not as a test, not as a statement, but as a closing. A proper one. Because some things deserve to end the way good stories end, not with a door slamming, but with a last long look at a room you are ready to leave. They met at a restaurant neither of them had been to before. Neutral ground. New tablecloths, new candles, no memories attached to the walls. She wore a dress he didn't recognize, green, not blue, and her hair was down, and she looked like someone in the early pages of a different story. They ate slowly and talked easily and laughed twice, real laughs, not polite ones. The ghost of the people they had been to each other moved gently around the table but did not sit down. Over dessert, she reached for her water glass and said, without looking at him, "If I had known who you were going to become." "I was already becoming it," he said quietly. "That's the thing, Diane. I was already him. You just decided who I was before you looked closely enough." She set down her glass. Looked at him. "We do that," he continued, not unkindly. "All of us. We decide who someone is based on where they are, not where they're going. Based on what they have, not what they're building. And sometimes the person standing right in front of us is the most extraordinary thing we will ever be close to, and we miss it because we were too busy being certain." She was quiet for a long moment. "I missed it," she said. "Yes," he said. "You did. No cruelty in it. No triumph. Just the clean, simple truth of a thing, laid gently on the table between them like a letter that had taken too long to arrive." He paid the bill. They walked out together into the cool evening air, the city busy and indifferent around them. At the corner where their paths would divide, they stopped. She looked at him one last time, with something in her eyes that was not quite love but was the closest thing to it that regret can manage. "Take care of yourself, Owen." "You too," he said. And then, with the particular warmth of a man who had chosen himself without bitterness, he smiled, full and real and entirely his own. He walked away. Behind him, the city lights climbed the dark sky like an answer to a question nobody had thought to ask out loud. He was not the man she had pitied. He had never been that man. He was the man who had walked alone in the dark and kept building anyway, who had loved without condition and lost without breaking and risen without needing anyone to witness it. He was the man who had finally learned the most important thing a person can learn. That a love which does not respect you is not love. It is just company. And you deserve far more than company. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that your worth was never up for someone else to decide, consider subscribing for more stories about love, resilience, and the quiet courage of people who refuse to give up on themselves. Every like, comment, and subscription tells us to keep these stories coming.